So welcome to the Fraudcast. The Fraudcast is a weekly get-together that Vito and I host for folks in the e-commerce fraud and risk space to talk about fraud trends, what's happening in e-commerce, and it's a really great place for people to come together if you are, if you have something top of mind, if you're experiencing a challenge in the projects that you're working on. This session is full of other experts that we have week over week, and it's a really great place to tap into this network, ask questions, get advice on things that you're experiencing in your day-to-day work. So yeah, we get together and Vito will typically kick us off with something specific. Today we'll be talking a little bit about returns just to give us some food for thought, and we could totally dive real deep into the topics that Vito brings to the table. Otherwise, if you have something top of mind that you're coming into this session, like I said, a challenge that you're experiencing that you would like to maybe crowdsource some advice about, feel free to put that in the chat or to interject, and we'll try to make sure that we can get around to your question or concern, and leave some time for that, for people to maybe help you out. There are a few different ways that you can participate during the session. As I mentioned, you can feel free to put all thoughts, comments, questions into the chat. And then, of course, we would love for you to just come off mute, be on camera if you can, and participate with us, because this is intended to be a conversation among everyone. This is not a typical sort of webinar session at all. That's not what it's intended to be. It's really intended to be a conversation for all of us to participate in. So if you are able to come on camera and be present with us, that's awesome. We love to see it. If you can't, that's totally fine. And then lastly, since we have a much larger group today, so there's a lot of, I think, first timers, for those who are returning and those who are visiting with us for the first time, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat so we have an idea of who we're with. Like I said, this is supposed to be more of a conversation, so it's kind of nice when we know who's in the room and we can introduce ourselves and connect with one another. So if you could throw your name, the company you're coming from, maybe your title, and then if you would like to, your LinkedIn for folks to connect with you as well, because sometimes I think there's moments when people have really great thoughts and maybe people would like to ask more questions, maybe offline, and continue that conversation. We totally encourage that. So please do introduce yourselves in the chat as we go along. And with that said, I'm going to hand things over to Vito.
What is up, y'all? So good to see you. Happy Wednesday. So many familiar and fresh faces in here. It's almost like we have a big thing to talk about today. It's almost like we're talking about the thing that everybody is talking about: returns, fraud, and abuse. So without further ado, I'm going to dive in because there's so much that we need to discuss with this. So let me kick the old deck off here. All right. So how can we stop returns, fraud, and abuse? I'm sure you thought about this before, right? So before we dive into it, I'd love to hear from the new and the old, and anyone who's here for the first time especially. What sort of returns issues are you struggling with right now? Where's the pain for you? Because this is not a monolithic thing, as you'll see from the talk today, but there is a very specific way that we can make our dreams come true and turn those nightmares into rolling green hills, etc. So I would just love to hear in the chat. You could even throw it in there, or just from someone who's been around the block a few times, or from a brave new person. What kind of stuff is keeping you up at night right now as regards returns abuse? And I will stop the share real quick. Matthew, you are always welcome to chime in. We don't need any raised hands with you.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And by the way, thank you for your help on that email that you sent me. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
For us currently, the refund and exchange process is very compartmentalized. So we've got like multiple departments that are involved in the process. And over the years, a lot of those different departments have been empowered to make decisions. So when that happens and you have it that way, you have certain people that are doing things they shouldn't be doing, or you have somebody doing something the other person doesn't know it's happening. I'll give you an example real quick. One of the issues we have is we have a call center that is international, and they are empowered to please the customer. So that means that they can do whatever they want. There's no systems of checks and balances. So one of the issues that we have today is we will see exchanges that are coming off of just standard orders, and those exchanges happen to be going to the agent's home locations. So what they'll do is they'll take an old order and they kind of rejuvenate that order by doing an exchange and send that merchandise to a different delivery address than the original transaction. And then we come to find out through research that it's the agent's mother, father, or whatever it may be. So where we face some of the challenges today is we need to streamline our returns and exchanges, and so that we don't have that compartmentalization that we have today. So sorry, a little long-winded, but that's one of the big issues we have today.
You're not allowed to raise your hand anymore, and you're not allowed to say sorry, okay? Because that is an absolute banger right there, as the kids say, because there's too many cooks in the kitchen, right? And that move, as a former customer support representative myself, that move to send your parents free stuff is brazen, to say the least. Our fraud and abuse teams are really well equipped mentally, at the very least, to kind of be on top of these things. But if we're not equipped operationally in a streamlined manner, all of this stuff can be going on, and we're only going to figure it out post facto, which really stinks. I'm sure that somebody else in this great call of 47 people is feeling the same kind of pain.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm with Matthew there, as like the biggest thing we struggle with is the compartmentalize in-store returns versus online returns, but then also having good data to be able to research it, to be able to say, oh yes, this is the type of return that happened. Where did it happen? What's going on with it? And so I'm on the same page as you, Matthew.
Well, let me just say, Jessica and Matthew and everyone else here, you're in the right place today, because I'm going to show you what that data can and should look like. I'm going to show you the kind of flows. I'm going to show you some bad boys and girls who tried to get one up on certain merchants, and we're going to talk about what we can do with this information to get to the next level. So thank you so much for breaking the ice there. Let's dive right back into it. Okay, so first we have to define the problem, right? And holler if you're with me here. You know, is it fraud or abuse? The buyer claimed that the item never arrived, but it did. Is it the F word or the A word? Well, what do you think?
It can be both. I think
It could be both. Yeah. See,
Yeah.
now this is the murkiness of all of it right here. But for this case, for this kind of thing, in this context that I'm giving today, we're going to go with the F word, right? That is what we're going to call fraud in this conversation, right? They wear an item once, they use the item once, maybe they get a hammer, do a couple nails, and then send it back to you. Fraud or abuse, right? Kind of murky. For this conversation, we're going to go with abuse, okay? They send you the rock in the box. That's pretty clearly F word, right? That's more F word than the first one, right? They bought the $3,000 bag and they're sending you back the rip-off one that from the flea market. No bueno. They ordered 10 items. They return 9 of them all the time. Abuse. Okay, so that's what we're defining as fraud and abuse here. But all of those things are going to fall into the umbrella of the decisioning tree that I'm about to show you. Okay. We need to ask ourselves these questions when we start our investigations. And if you're going to make a solid business plan to get this problem under your purview, which Matthew and Jessica are kind of really driving at, like, hey, we need to own this. We need to make sure that we are the overlord of this whole thing, because if it's all over the place and if we got too many people pulling too many different levers, we're just going to be doing whack-a-mole, and that's not going to be good. Where's the pain coming from? Is it coming from inside, like Matthew's saying? Is it coming from outside? Do the returns turn into appeasements? or do the returns like, can we go with a rapid refund, or do we need to check the item? Can we give an appeasement or not? Are we going to thumbs up or thumbs down the rapid refund or the appeasement, the credit, that kind of thing? And then what kind of return policy does this person get? How can we identify this person and kind of class them in terms of good buyer who maybe returns a bunch of stuff, but they're not doing any funny business, somebody who's getting a little less good, and then, hey, these are the bad ones. We're going to make sure that any sort of refund that they send us needs to get checked out in the warehouse, needs to get processed well before we give them their money back, right? And the outcomes are like this. This is the blue sky stuff. Your return rates get reduced because you know where the root causes are. You can segment appropriately. Returns fraud and appeasement abuse get controlled and dialed in and dialed down, okay, because you're now the overlord. If you use the data insights that I'm about to show you, you'll be able to speak in dollars and cents a lot more effectively across different geos, across different buyer age groups and stuff like that. Your customers are going to be happy with the instant refund, the instant resolution stuff, the good ones. The bad ones are going to be put into the slow bin. And then finally, this automation will allow you to dream even further, because there's a one size fits all to kind of start in the initial attack, but mostly this is going to be very tailored to your group. All right. So let's get a little Sun Tzu going. You got to start your day with a little Sun Tzu. Know thy enemy, right? DM me after this if you'd like this, because I did a little digging online. I actually paid a couple of dollars and I got the Bible of returns abuse here. This is a 200-page PDF. It's Bob's book. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Bob's book. Jessica, I see you're not. Did you buy Bob's book too? Are we fellow Bob's book aficionados here?
I T-botted and shared it with all of us.
Oh, they're good. So maybe you could DM Jessica too, but you could DM me as well. I'll send this to you, Bob's book. And oh my, if you read it, then this is kind of reading you got to do. I'm sure, Jessica, you kind of chewed on it for a little bit. You kind of maybe had to pick the jaw up off the floor sometimes.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling how people can get away with it, but people have the audacity to even go about it, and think that it's okay. Like, he makes it seem like, oh, it's nothing at all, and it's like you're stealing from a company. It's something.
It's so celebratory.
Yes.
I know it's tiny here, but he's like, dude, I did 8,000 of these at the biggest and best, and he'll show you how to manipulate labels. And one of the things that I think is very pertinent to what we're going to talk about today is he really bangs the drum for using the item was not as described reason code in terms of why the refund is being placed. We talk about SNAD, significantly not as described, in chargebacks, but if you think about the reason codes that people are putting in for why they're doing a return, he's all about the not as described, because as he shows throughout his 300-page screed here, more often than not, businesses will kind of just say, okay, well, keep it, no big deal, or I'll refund it entirely. You don't even need to give it back to me. If it was bad for you, it's got to be bad for everybody. So while I'm doing my little spiel here, I'd love to see in the chat if your company is also doing that with people who are saying, hey, I need a refund because this item is not as you described it on your page. That'll be good to know. But know your enemy. Speak to me, speak to Jessica. We'll get you in touch with Bob's books over here. And this is definitely worth reading because we want to know the threat landscape as well as we can. So let's dive into these specific orders that I pulled up for you. I'm going to walk you through a 3-month journey from the same buyer. To quote Dragnet, all the names have been protected, all the names have been changed to protect the innocent, even though they're not so innocent here, as you'll see. So you might see some funky names and numbers, 8675309, you know where that comes from. But July 9th, 2024, a balmy day. The sun was high in the sky, and Jane Doe over here places an order for about $370 with 5 different SKUs on the 9th of July. Everything checks out, nothing fraudulent in terms of the way we assess an order, right? But the 17th comes around. They file a return. The reason no longer needed for the 2 highest item SKUs in the cart. What do we think? We say, all right, thumbs up it. Okay, It's a return. We've actually seen Jane Doe before. They're good. We'll let it slide. Okay. We'll give them the rapid refund. We'll get the stuff back. They did that. They got the rapid refund. They send the stuff back. Everything is cool. About a month later, Jane Doe comes back with a much bigger cart. Okay. Starts to use a bunch of discount codes now. Gets about $130 off of an order that would have been what? Almost $700 because it was a $557 order. Returns 3 of them. The reason code's no longer needed, significantly not as described, and no longer needed. And these are for like lower dollar amounts in the cart. Notice that the order was placed on the 11th of August and the return was made on the 1st of September. So if we think about the order being placed on the 11th, it was probably received by like the 15th, and then they place it about 2 weeks later, the refund, and they put the significantly not as described in there. Now we start to kind of like scratch our chin a little bit, because by putting significantly not as described, this individual right here, maybe they knew this, maybe they read Bob, maybe they didn't read Bob, but they found out really quickly, oh crap, they're letting me just keep that t-shirt. I have to send the other 2 things back, but I could keep the t-shirt. Remember these dates and watch what happens here. They filed that refund on September 1st. They make another order 11 days later with an even bigger cart here, $668 worth. Bada bing, bada boom. Now I'm going to take the top 6 of the top 7 items and file significantly not as described refund reasons, because I know I can keep this stuff, right? I'm going to get away with this. Bob told me it'll work, right? Wrong. Okay. They filed this 4 days after they made the order. They knew what was up. So that was a flag right there. The SNAD stuff was a flag. The flag that all of the highest ticket items in the cart were SNADed within 4 days of making the order. Nope, no way. And so much, no fast refund for you. Okay, so what happened because of intelligent decisioning and by using the kind of data I'm going to show you in a second was that the flow pushed this buyer out of the rapid refund channel and said, okay, it wasn't as described. We're sorry. We can still be really nice to you. We're so sorry. Oh, that stinks. We want to make sure you're happy. But you got to send that to us before we give you the refund. And we got to take a look at it when it gets to the warehouse. And we're going to analyze every bit of it, because we know you're quite a high velocity returner here. The refund was withheld until the items were processed in the warehouse, and the buyer was allowed to keep going and keep shopping. Lo and behold, and I'll spoiler alert, they keep shopping there. If I go back into their profile, they are still shopping at that merchant. All is well, but they learned, and they haven't done it since, that little SNAD move isn't going to work for them anymore because they've already done it. So what do we use to like figure that out? We talk about, I wish I had the data to do this. I wish I had the way to kind of see see this from a data-driven level. These are the things I want you to consider, and here's how I'm going to kind of spark your imagination. Think about the time between the order and return. On that really bad one I just showed you, the one that was like the red flag, there were 4 days between that order and the return. Add in like 2 or 3 days for shipping, and it was almost instantaneous, number one. Number two, think about what's being returned, what items are being returned, and whether or not they were the least or most expensive item in the order. The bad stuff, all of the most expensive stuff in the order was returned. So that's another kind of wrinkle in here. We talked about the death of single signal supremacy, right? Not one signal is going to show a bad actor, but a combination of these signals will definitely put them into a higher risk category. And then we want to think about combined identifiers. How do we identify that person? What is their identity? As you're all pros at this, but it's not just the email, it's not just the phone number, it's not just the device or the IP or the user account. It's a combination of them, right? We're kind of making this nebulous aggregate of who somebody is. So if we think about that combined identifier, how many orders have they placed recently? How many returns have they requested recently? And to quote Slavoj Zizek, and so on, and so on, and so on. And this is how you build out your and so on. I want this to be a template for all of you when you dream about the kind of data you want. These are the 5 elements of a good feature or a good measure of grabbing data and having a number with it that's going to allow you to see differences between who's good and who's bad. Start with a primary identifier. We talked about that like nebulous world of identifiers. If you make a couple of these, you could really catch, somebody who's maybe got multiple email addresses or multiple devices and so on, right? Bring up a period of analysis, 30, 60, 90 days, 365 days. Was it the last year, the last month, et cetera? Go to a secondary identifier, right? The card bin, the bank, what SKU is being targeted. And then take the event type into consideration. Was it from a return? Was it just from an order? Was it a chargeback they placed? Maybe your team flags a bad return after it comes in. Are we pulling back that flagged return as fraudulent? And then finally, bring in your aggregation, whether it's account or how much money is at stake. This will allow you to come up with something that says like, hey, show me everything off this confirmation phone over the last 90 days that's targeting this SKU, right? That's making a return, and show me how much money they've returned off this SKU. Maybe that will surface somebody who's really attacking one of your SKUs and perhaps switching emails, but hanging on to that phone number, right? And then I'm sure your heads are spinning about how you can kind of mix and match all the different signals available to you into an aggregate feature that would give you granular insight into what's being targeted, who's doing the targeting, and whether or not they're good or bad. Because sometimes you'll come up with a feature set and you have a list of all good buyers. There's people who aren't doing any sort of like fraud. That's why I love that event type with bad returns. If bad return yields no, you could come up with a baseline of like, okay, all my good actors, they operate in this way. And there's like a threshold for good actors. But once you get out of this threshold, that's when you start getting into the bad. All my bad guys do this. All my good guys do that. Where's the delta? That's where I want to like focus in on. Okay. And from there, we start to steer return requests. We're not in the business of just, whole cloth blocking people from transacting on our site. We want to figure out, am I doing instant refunds or am I requiring package verification, right? We all know the market has moved to a place where every buyer, we talked about that kind of instant gratification gene last week, but every buyer has that instant gratification gene and they want that instant refund. We want to give it to them. But maybe we've come up with a couple of signals through those features we've developed that say, you might not be a really good candidate for this, or vice versa. Hey, you're clean, you're good, you're not registering those big scary numbers, so go ahead. Here's your instant refund, and we're going to keep an eye on you, because if you start doing this over and over and over again, you're going to get onto the bad boy list. Finally, selective appeasement. Okay, am I giving them credit? Am I refunding them partially, entirely? Am I extending that credit or refund to the orders, to specific items? Am I giving them free shipping? Am I refunding them their shipping after sending me the stuff back? That might be a nice play for somebody like Jane Doe that we saw earlier. Hey, we know what you're up to with the SNAD thing, but we want to keep you around. So make sure you send all that stuff back to us. We're not going to give you a rapid refund, but we will refund your shipping charge just because we're so grateful for your continued business and so on. This is where we talk, my friends. And I cannot wait to hear what y'all have to say about this. Where do you dream of steering these returns? What kind of like decisioning trees are you cooking up in your mind as you're thinking about getting in front of this? What would you like to be able to say is the A, B, or C outcome for people who are requesting returns? And most importantly, what do you need to get there? So love to hear from y'all. So much to talk about, so much going on in the chat, and I am going to turn my microphone off because I can't wait to hear what y'all have to say. So have at it.
I think a big part for me is miscommunication and misinformation. So we use Shopify as a platform for all of our apparel, which is great. I love Shopify. They have their own fraud filters. I don't have to worry about chargebacks. That's awesome. But we found some glitches last November that was causing orders that were canceled and refunded to still get shipped out. And of course, we found some bad actors associated with that. Outstanding. So at the time, I talked to my fulfillment center and I said, hey, I need to know about the returns process from I issue a return, we use Navar for returns. So it's all fully automated. Yep, not a problem. It creates an RMA and it's attached to the shipping label. As soon as the shipping label gets scanned in by FedEx, we issue that instant return. Something I hate. We all probably hate, but whatever. Instant gratification. Then when we get to GXO, our fulfillment center, the RMA is scanned and populates for what items should be in there. Each individual SKU is then scanned in and accounted for, and the RMA is closed out. All right, so what happens if they don't put all the items in? Oh, it leaves the RMA open and we assess that as it happens. Okay, perfect, not a problem. What happens if they put the wrong SKU in? Oh, again, we notate that we can't close the RMA if it's incomplete. Okay, great. What happens if they put a non-Peloton product in there? They accidentally put their Nike sports bra in instead of Peloton. Oh yeah, that almost never happens, but we do account for that. Great, not a problem. You guys actually have things buttoned up. Can I get exposure to the unclosed RMAs? Yeah, not a problem. We're working on reporting with that because we had to change some things. Cool, not a problem. Last week, I found somebody that's $200,000 worth of fraudulent returns. Turns out they're not looking at the uncompleted RMAs. They're just putting them into the wind. So that part about communication, when you tell me this is how it is, and I go, perfect, I don't need to look at that. That's awesome. So yeah, so that's a big, they're returning literally every single order.
I saw a lot of
Fully.
I saw a lot of eyebrows pop while
It's a
you were
lot
talking.
of, yeah, I know. I really liked that. Thank you. All about the drama. But also one I actually caught about a year ago and put a stop to pretty quickly before it had a major impact was item not received. Because she was banking on the fact that we couldn't prove, or she couldn't prove she didn't receive the item. She would take a picture of all of the things that she supposedly got missing the one item she didn't, because that's proof. And she did this on almost every order. At least one item was missing. And we flagged it in the system. We're like, sorry, this is not accurate. So I worked with legal and I sent her a note and said, this is super cool, but we'll no longer be refunding for these because you have inconsistent behavior. And we know based on this that you could not be missing one item from the 200 orders that you placed last year. It's not feasible. Every now and then we miss something, we take that egg on our face, but not every single order to your house is missing an item.
Shelly, there's so much to unpack here, and I'm just really curious. We're talking about wrangling that RMA really, and like that RMA is a beast, and we need to maybe get a harness from Murdoch's Ranch and Home, right, and put it on that RMA beast.
Well, thankfully, my DC manager is actually willing to do a 2-week study based on RMAs. How many RMAs are we getting in that 2 weeks? How many are completed fully as they're supposed to be? How many are incomplete and are left open? And what's the loss associated with that? So I can get a real life picture of what's happening outside of this one individual.
That's amazing. And I'm just wondering if you can kind of double click on the fact that you were able to hunt down the individual who was putting INR in there, and how you were able to take any sort of compelling evidence that you had and associate it with or interact with the RMA to make that happen. Because that sounds like, to use a scientific term, it sounds like chargebacks on acid.
Yeah, kind of. It is. Actually, they weren't the best sleuths in the world. They're delivering to one address. They have 26 different emails associated with the address, but one address.
Brilliant. This is why they got into that field. So much to talk about there. And if anyone has gone through something similar, I would love to hear it. But I do want to hit the chat real quick. John, who I believe is new here. Hi, John. Welcome, John. Would love to hear from you and see you on camera. But John, I know John. Hey, John.
Hey, Vito. How are you, brother?
Great to see you. And
Too.
now I know it's a common name, John, but there's only one John in my book, and it's this John right here. John asks, well, you know what, John, you're here, you're talking. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about your question? Because I think you're going to have a lot of great answers from this group.
Sure. Yeah. So you hit on one area where you can kind of control and guide customer behavior, and that's on fast refund eligibility. Because I'm thinking about the long-term roadmap. I'd love to be able to control and influence good customer and bad customer behavior through different touch points. So I put some examples in what I put in the chat. Like maybe for Vito, we love Vito as a customer. He only pays a $5 return fee or no return fee. And John, whose returns at an 80% rate, has to pay $10, $15, right, to dissuade from returns or account for the fact that this person may be wardrobing, et cetera, et cetera. Another example is maybe for resellers. We have mixed emotions on resellers, and sometimes they buy a lot of stuff, and if they can't sell it, they return it. So for resellers, would we ever get to the place where we make every reseller purchase final sale? You can still check out, you just can't return with us anymore. So I'm just curious if anybody's had success launching other customized policies for individuals or groups of individuals outside of refund timing eligibility.
See some shaking heads in here, John. I think you might have touched a raw nerve. Anybody, well, even that reseller bit, I really like that idea, right? Where it's final sale. We know what you're up to. Cool, we appreciate you, but you know, I think a lot of John's questions come down to the sort of feature building that I just showed you a little bit earlier. How can we best identify these people? It's a little bit difficult to granularly define a reseller, right? Because, are they using a business card? A lot of them don't use business cards, right? There's no real telltale thing other than a Pinterest page or, something that maybe Ryan can surface at scope now, right? Some sort of like other third party thing coming in and saying, hey, this is a reseller. Okay. If I was able to then pull that information, say, here's all my resellers, and I put that into my decision flow, then I can branch out from there. But that's a little bit difficult to do. And it don't seem like anyone here has had success in doing that. But I will shut up to give that person who has had success in doing that an opportunity to chime in and help John out.
Well, sounds like I'm not behind the curve at least. Sounds like there's a magic formula to figure it out, but that is an aspiration of mine. So it's a journey we're going on.
Well,
So,
sorry for Matthew.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't have that figured out. I think that's an interesting idea. I was going to say that if that was something that I was tasked with today, then the only way that I would know to really do it is, some of these third-party tools will flag delivery addresses as like a freight forwarder. So a lot of times we see that resellers are obviously connected to a freight forwarder. So I think for me personally, that's probably where I would start if the company decided to go in that direction, to say, hey, look, all your sales are final, is based off of freight forwarding activity. But again, I don't think that's not 100% accurate by no means, but
it's a good example of another customer segmentation, though. People who use freight forwarders, even whether they're resellers or not, it's just customers who use freight forwarders may be subjected to different policies if you can integrate the tech stack.
Yeah, it could be. And I tell you, for me personally, this becomes a very gray conversation, because where I worry about is from the legal perspective, because like you have to come to a point where you say, okay, at what number, what is our threshold, right? So, and then once you agree on the threshold as a company that, hey, Matthew can only do X amount of refunds, and after that, no more refunds, so all your sales are final, then that has to be carried out as a standard operating procedure consistently, right? Because you can't pick and choose, because then that's when you get in trouble legally. So I think what you're talking about, John, is interesting to me personally. There's a lot of hands in the pot, and I got to get a lot of people to buy in on that. If we were to try to incorporate something like that, and I don't know. I mean, it's interesting though what you're thinking about. I like that.
Matthew, I love what you brought up, because even if we're not thinking about, we talked about different personas here. John was saying that is a different persona type, but if we just think about reshippers, freight forwarding businesses, etc., most of us, Signified for instance, can easily flag those freight forwarders, and we know the logistics involved in freight forwarding. If it's going to take so long to get out there, it's going to take so long to come back. A rogue wave hits that ship. I mean, I don't know how these things really work. You know, you got to batten down. If they don't batten down the hatches enough, your stuff's in the water. So it's going to be really difficult to get that thing back into the warehouse. So if I was able to say, you want to offshore my goods, you want to go on a freight forwarder, great, cool, happy to sell to you, but all sales are final. You know, to have a decisioning tree that says, is delivery address reshipper, is normalized address for delivery address reshipper, because you really want to normalize that address post sale, because you know what's going to happen next. It's going to wind up in there. That's my sound effect for address manipulation. That's going to wind up in that string, and then that's going to get around a non-normalized address. But I'm getting too geeky here. If we can say, is delivery address normalized a freight forwarder, then we can say all sales are final, no refunds. You are not allowed back into that loop. That's a really good idea. I like that a lot. So, John, I know we really didn't get exactly to that reseller, but you did birth a pretty cool idea through that. And I look forward definitely to continuing talking with you and everyone else here to get down to that.
Hey, Vito, one other thing. Hey, John, you really have piqued my interest on this one. And I'm curious, typically, at least where I'm at, and I'm sure everybody's the same way, you have to show an ROI on this. So like, if I'm going to go to leadership and say, hey, if you're a reseller, all your sales are final, and I need everybody to agree on that, right? We can't have somebody just saying, yeah, we'll probably go with that. We got to be consistent. Like, how have you tracked that to see if that's truly a financial loss to your company? Meaning, there is a cost for doing business, right? Like, we're never going to go into a world where we're not going to have some sort of loss. But I'm just curious, like, if you've tracked it to say, hey, resellers are causing us X amount of loss by doing these refunds. And if you don't mind sharing, like, how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, I don't have the answer right now. So resellers have come up every year, and it's been, should we continue to allow resellers? And every year I run the big analysis and say, yeah, there's some bad guys hiding in there, and there's some nefarious behavior, but generally it's X million dollars of demand, and everyone says, oh, never mind, they're good. We're cool with resellers, right? What I'm doing this year is I'm taking a more nuanced approach. So I'm doing a full debit credit analysis where I can say resellers represent this much demand, and here's every single credit from that demand. Customer care contacts, reship refunds, returns that end up damaged, returns that end up write-offs to never get them. I want to see every single credit documented out. That will inform where I want to reach out and impact those customers and what policies I would or would not want to apply. So short answer is haven't done it yet, but I'm going to do it.
That debit credit analysis, again, you're coming up with great stuff here. We're not getting at the killer thing, but we're coming up with great stuff. That debit credit analysis, I think all of us are going to be tasked with in this world of tariffs now. We know everything is kind of coming down and being hyper scrutinized outside of just the chargebacks and outside of even just returns. Every touch has a new eye on it. Every new corner in which the business is being affected has a new eye on it. So I think in doing that kind of exercise, that debit credit exercise for a specific buyer type, a granular segment in your ecosystem, you're going to find some things that you might not have been looking for, but will help you tremendously. Jared, I see you're off mute. I wondered if you had anything to add.
Sorry, are you asking me?
Yes.
It's interesting to listen to everybody's input on this. It's, I was looking at John's comment there about return fees and things, and it's a difficult thing to look at. I mean, you want to foster an environment with customers to where they keep coming back, and they, so it kind of plays into that, the price of doing business comment that was made too. It is a delicate kind of balance, and it's difficult. I look at just this week, we've had an individual that purchased 9 different Garmin watches from our stores and returned them 9 times within the last month or so. We finally shut him down, wouldn't let him purchase from us again on this. These are all e-com orders, by the way. And then he'll return them to the store. And it's difficult because yes, we want to accommodate, but at the same time, we feel like we're being taken advantage of. These are $1,000 a pop, so it ends up with a lot of product. And these are also things, you know, he'll wear it for a day or two and then he'll bring it back, decide it, kind of chalk it up to buyer's remorse type of thing, and we can't sell that product as new after that. So it becomes a real problem for us, and so that's, and I think personally, I think there's a fraud angle there. I don't think it's I'm just a bit too jaded to think that it's just simply OCD or buyer's remorse when it's that many times within a few months. I think there's more to it. Just can't prove it, but I do believe there's something going on there. So it's you know, my point with all that is we're being taken advantage of with our generosity and our customer service on one side of things. But then we don't want to lose sight of the customers that we care about and that we want to accommodate too. So it's difficult.
Jared, twofold question there, because this is a fantastic point you raise. When you say we're being taken advantage of, do you feel that message coming down on you from up above? Or is that just your feeling, or is it both? I'd love to know that. And then I'd also love to hear about the integration that you have between the brick and mortar stores and your e-commerce, and how you were able to spot that somebody is buying from e-commerce but returning in store.
You know, first of all, that's just my words. When I say I feel like we're taking advantage of, or being taken advantage of, that's from me. You know, I certainly can't speak for people above me at all. But I know that you know, we want to take care of customers. We want them to be happy. As far as and again with my thought on I there's nothing to prove that there's fraud going on with this particular case, but it just in my gut, I feel like there's something there. I just don't know what that is. There's nothing on paper that shows that it's fraud. We're getting the product back, but it's product that we can't turn around and just put out on in the stores as new. So I don't know. I wish I knew if there was some definite fraud there so we could prevent it in the future, but it's just my gut feeling. I really don't know what else to tell you.
Paula has a great question for you. Is he getting store credit, or are you refunding his cards? That could be a little vector action right there. Great call out, Paula.
As far as store credit, it's I think straight up refunds.
And then Jessica with the killer assist here. Is it the same card that he's putting the refunds on, or different cards? There could be a little bit of a little arbitrage action here on the cards. Who knows? Would love to.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know that. I'd have to dig into that a little bit more.
It's all good. We are all here for inspiration. We come out of here with a lot of great ideas. And I think the whole game here is that we never have an answer on anything, right? That's called job security for all of us, right? But Jared, that's fantastic. All of you, I think this conversation needs to go another round. Honestly, we've really just kind of scratched the surface here, and I think I'm also very vindicated in just from being at MRC and everywhere else is all anyone talks about. Shelly, I see you're off mute.
I was just wondering, as we round this conversation out, is anybody using an EBR tool for this? We're looking to drop contract under AppRiz. We know that we've spoken with Lululemon and they've been using them for a really long time and have heard great things, especially in the e-commerce state, which is 95% of my business, as their EBR tool. So just wondering if anybody has any thoughts on that we can continue on to a different phone call of transitioning to, okay, we now have identified what's going on, but really, how do we get reporting on this on a live action?
Quote Ferris Bueller. Anyone? If you have an answer for it, you know where to find Shelly Also, if you know anyone at JP Morgan Chase, put them to Shelly. That's the new thing we're all working on here. Find us on LinkedIn because we got this conversation going everywhere. Tune in next week as we talk VAMP next week. Believe it or not, we got a big one coming up. We got a big VAMP talk next week, but I think we're going to really just be talking returns a lot more, especially with the kind of focus that John is talking about here, doing the debit credit analysis, really honing in on little things because the businesses need it nowadays more than ever. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you for coming out. It's great to see so many new and familiar faces. I hope you have a great rest of your week. DM me if you want Bob's book or anything else, and reach out, talk amongst yourselves, as they used to say on SNL. Talk amongst yourselves, reach out to each other. There's an awesome community we have here. I really, really appreciate you bringing the fire today, y'all. Have a great one. Thank you so much. And until next week, I'll be seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Bye,
Well,
everybody.
thanks.
Bye, everybody.